Well, nice to be here this evening with everybody. My name's Alfredo Salkeld. I am one of the owners of a company called Upfirst, right? As it will be no surprise, we sell an AI receptionist software. So I thought it would be useful if I covered sort of what's hype, what's reality, and then what are the actual steps if you decide that it would make sense to set up an AI receptionist for your business. But I want to take a step back and just explain how I ended up starting an AI receptionist company. I spent many years in software, and then around 2020, COVID happened, and I decided I wanted to change, and I decided to leave software and become a beekeeper. So I had a beekeeping business, but it wasn't a traditional beekeeping business where I sold honey. Me and my business partner actually set up honey beehives at people's homes. So it was almost like a beehive subscription business. This was for homeowners who wanted a beehive, they wanted the honey, they wanted to learn about bees, but they didn't want to spend the time or effort actually keeping their hive alive. So that's what we did. And at our peak, we had around 200 beehives across 150 different residential and commercial properties. Uh, I ran the business from my cell phone, and I would get a ton of calls. Sometimes it would be from leads. Sometimes it would be from customers letting me know, hey, my honeybees are swarming. I need a beekeeper to come catch them out of this tree. And when you're in the middle of working, as you all know, when you're in the middle of a beehive, when I was doing this business, it's really difficult to answer the phone in a timely way. And I found that people wouldn't want to leave voicemails. So fast forward a few years, I left this beekeeping business, and a friend of mine told me that he was starting uh, an AI receptionist company because he has a law firm, and he felt that the amount that he was spending on a call center just to take a message for him didn't really make sense. And he thought, I think AI can do a better job at this. So he asked me if I wanted to join him in that business. And that's how we started Upfirst. Now, um, I want to give everyone a very special piece of technology here at the beginning of this webinar. You probably all have one of this at home. It's probably on right now, the BS detector. I want to equip you with a BS detector because, as you know, we are not the only AI company out there, right? AI is huge right now. You can't go about your day without hearing about it. And there are a lot of voice AI companies, both in the home services space and in healthcare and in auto dealerships. So you're sort of getting bombarded with sales from voice AI companies. And I'm cognizant of that, which is why I want to equip everyone with a sort of BS detector as you go about your day and hear from different AI companies. There's three things that come up a lot when people are pitching voice AI, right? They will say that voice AI receptionists can answer a call better than a human. And the argument here is that if you work with a traditional call center, these people are answering calls for dozens of businesses at once. So when someone calls in for your business, all they see is a few sentences that pop up on the screen that just tell them the name of your business, how you want them to greet callers, but they don't really know much about your business other than what's on the screen in front of them. So the argument is that an AI receptionist can be loaded up with information about your business and have a higher quality conversation. You'll also hear people say, well, the voices are so lifelike that people they won't recognize the difference. It's just like talking to a person. And there is truth to the fact that AI voices have gotten very lifelike and they have a range of different accents. We have customers in Spain, we have customers in Cyprus, we have customers uh, in a variety of different countries. And it's amazing how many different AI voices are available now that are quite lifelike. And then you'll hear just every business needs an AI receptionist, right? There's no exception to this rule. If you get phone called, you can save money and you're going to book so many more leads with an AI receptionist. So with the BS detector activated, I would like to point out that all three of these are not quite exactly true. So I'll share my point of view after having set up thousands of businesses with AI receptionists. There are really only two reasons why you should consider an AI receptionist. And if these two reasons don't apply to you, you probably don't need this. I'm not sure it would benefit your business. The first one is that you're currently paying for a traditional answering service, whether that's an Overshore's virtual assistant or a traditional call center, and you're unhappy with the quality of the service or with the cost of the service. And when looking at this first point, I mean, it's basically just a math equation, right? You know how much you make for uh, when someone books a home inspection. You know how much you pay for the phone calls, and you just do the math and see does it make sense. So I mentioned my co-founder, Gene. Has a law firm. He was paying a company to answer calls for him, and it was around $810 a month to answer around 90 calls a month, around 3 calls per day. So if you're selling a really, really big ticket item, then yeah, maybe it does make sense to have a full-time human or to pay a top of the line call center. But you really need to look at, well, how many incremental inspections are they booking uh, when they get my overflow calls and when they get my after hours calls and work backwards from there. So that would be the first reason that an AI receptionist may make sense for you. You want to cut your phone receptionist bill if you're already working with a traditional call center, or you're just unhappy with the way that they're answering calls. This is something I also hear, right? These jobs tend to have really high churn, high turnover. People don't stay in these jobs and they feel like they just don't get a consistent quality service. What's the second reason? The second reason is that your way of dealing with missed calls right now is just to send them to voicemail, right? When you're in the middle of an inspection, you decide, I just can't get to this. You let it go to voicemail. But you find that some number of callers, by the time you call them back, have moved on to somebody else. Or some percentage of callers just don't leave you a voicemail. If you're finding that every person who calls you, they leave a voicemail, and when you call them back, they're ready to do business with you, then that's great. Again, these two reasons probably don't apply to you. So my point of view on this is that you don't really have to be better than a full-time human receptionist, right? If you can afford to have a full-time person who just knows your business is really good, that is always going to be better, at least for the foreseeable future. I've seen this technology change a lot in the 2 years that we've been doing this, but it still applies that a full-time person is better. It just isn't the reality of how most businesses operate, right? When I was running that beekeeping business, even if I wanted to have a full-time person answering the phones, I just couldn't afford it. So I find it sort of a little frustrating when people say, I prefer to talk to a human. It's like, of course, we all do. But running a small business, the reality is you can't always hire a full-time human. The other sort of frustrating thing about a voicemail is you just don't get the details you need, right? I suspect that most people here, you have a website. You probably have a way to be able to book an inspection from your website. And for most of you, you probably click that button and then you get a form that looks something like this, where you find out, are they the buyer? Are they the seller? What's their name? What's their square footage, year built, right? You probably have a form that they have to go through. But then when you get a voicemail, it's like, hey, my name's Alfredo. I'm looking to book an inspection at 22 Gleewood Place East. Call me back. Thanks. Right. So typically people don't leave you a voicemail that has the info you need. And if it does, then you're stuck listening to a very long message or going through the transcription. So this is, I think, the sort of way of comparing it. Can an AI receptionist get you more business than a traditional voicemail? The nice thing about an AI receptionist is that you can train it to ask questions. So you can tell it the information that you need in order to book an inspection or qualify a lead, and it's going to ask the callers those questions. You can also connect it directly to your calendar, and have those inspections booked directly on your calendar while the person is still on the call. And again, you can give it information so that if there's certain questions that people frequently ask, right? Do you do septic inspections? Do you check for mold? You can have the receptionist know the answer to those questions to be able to give people answers quickly without them waiting for you to call them back. And then when that phone call is over, you get a full recording of the call, you get a transcript of the call, and you get a short text message with a summary as soon as that call is over. But for this to work well, it does need to be trained properly. And the first piece is deciding, before even getting to the training, what calls do you want to send to the receptionist? I find that most home inspectors, they just have one phone. Their business phone is their personal phone. Everything goes to one. If that's you, you basically have three options. Regardless of whether you have AT&T, T-Mobile, Cricket, it doesn't matter. Um, all phone carriers allow you to forward calls, but you usually get three options. You can forward every single one of your calls, meaning when somebody calls you, your phone is never going to ring again. Whether it's your kid, your spouse, or a client, it is going to go directly to the AI receptionist. For that reason, I usually don't recommend that people send every single one of their calls to the AI. The second option, and this is the most common, is to just send your missed calls. So if you do this, your phone is going to ring just like normal. You'll see who's calling, and you can decide whether or not to pick up, right? So if it's like a VIP client that you would rather handle yourself, great, you get the opportunity to answer. But if you're busy, if you're in the middle of something, if you just don't notice the call coming in, you just don't pick up, you hit decline, and then the AI receptionist will take over. So again, I talked a lot about it sort of being a smarter voicemail and this sort of second bucket. Think of it like just replacing your voicemail. Um, and then there's a third option, right, which is you only want to send it after certain hours. Most cell phones make this quite difficult to do. You're going to have to manually turn forwarding on and off. So there isn't, or put your phone on do not disturb. That's essentially how you would set a schedule. Most phones don't let you literally program, after 5 o'clock, then forward the calls. Now, what about if you do have two phone numbers? You have one number for your business and one personal phone number. Then it does open up some other options. You can have the AI receptionist pick up all of your calls, and then because you have a second number that you can transfer to, that personal number, you can give the receptionist some training and say, hey, under these conditions, I want the leads to be transferred to me, and then that receptionist can hand off the call to you. But if it's a situation where it doesn't seem like it's someone who's interested in booking an inspection, maybe they just have a quick question, then it can go to the receptionist to either take a message or just answer their question. So I hope that's just an overview of the actual how do you connect your phone to the receptionist? And there's a few options there. And then once you get into actually training your receptionist, there's basically three things to think about. How do you want it to greet people? What information or instructions do you want it to follow? And then what systems do you want it to be able to connect to? So let's talk about that first one first, the greeting. A lot of times I see a business sign up and their greeting is something like this, thank you for calling Guardian Home Inspections. How may I help you? This is the most common greeting I see. Thank you for calling X. How may I help you? It's nice in that it's really short, but I actually don't really recommend making the greeting this simple and sweet. This, I think, would be a better greeting. At least this has been my experience with the different companies I've worked for. Thanks for calling Guardian Home Inspections. Alfredo is currently on an inspection, but I'm his virtual assistant who can schedule inspections or answer questions. Are you calling to schedule an inspection? So why do I feel like this is a better greeting, even though it's significantly longer? A few different reasons. The first is that you are explaining why this AI is answering instead of a person. I think people are understanding to the fact that a small business may not be able to get to every single phone call. So if you front load the information that, hey, the reason this AI is answering is because we're busy with another client, we're busy actually doing the job, the person's more receptive to speaking to it. The second piece is I never recommend trying to pass off the AI as though it's a human. I do think the technology is going to get there. When I look at where this was 2 years ago, it's amazing how much it's improved. But in its current state, the best AI receptionists, you can still tell that you're not talking to a human. And one of the biggest reasons is the quality of the voice, but also even just the cadence of speaking. There's so much going on when two humans are having a conversation that signal to each other when it's the other person's turn to talk. And that technology is still not perfect with AI receptionists. So I'd rather just disclose it up front. I'm a virtual assistant. Then this next piece, I think people have been burned by these old school phone systems where, you call your bank and it's, thank you for calling Wells Fargo. In a few words, tell me what you're calling about. And then you tell them what you're calling about. I didn't understand that. In a few words, tell me what you're calling about. And you keep trying to rephrase your question. You're saying it in a normal way. The system doesn't understand, and you just get frustrated. You feel like you can't do anything. So I like to, in the greeting, explain that this thing can take actions. It can schedule inspections and it can answer questions. It's not just a traditional sort of press one for sales, press two for customer support type of system. And then the final piece, loading it up with a binary question, either a yes no question or asking to pick between two options, I think makes it easy to to start understanding what does this caller need, and then set them up on a right path with the receptionist. Opening up with, how can I help you? I have noticed that, at least for some industries, for some callers, they hesitate because they know it's not a human and they're not sure, well, what can this thing help me with? I don't know what I can respond that this thing is going to actually be able to do. I really think that over the next several years, we're going to see people get more accustomed to talking to systems like this. The same way people now are very good at searching things in Google, they're good at finding things in ChatGPT. People are going to get more used to talking to voice AI. But I think setting up your greeting properly goes a long way. So the next piece is your knowledge and your instructions to the receptionist, right? So going back to this form, you need to tell the receptionist what information do you want it to actually collect from callers. Imagine you hired a front desk person, you'd need to do the same thing, right? You would need to say, hey, when somebody calls, here's the information that I need you to take down. So I'm going to leave this slide deck and I'm going to come into Upfirst. Again, I want to be very straightforward. There are other receptionist platforms out there. Each one works a little bit differently. Some are flow builders where you connect different modals and you can get super, super technical. Um, we've tried to design our platform to be as straightforward to use as possible. So I'm going to show you what I know, which is our platform. But again, keep in mind there are other ones out there. So I'm going to skip over sort of some of the obvious stuff, like you can change the voice, you can change your greeting, as I mentioned. This is where the bulk of what you need to know is going to happen in the training section. So, how do you tell the receptionist what information to ask? You literally just write out those instructions. Um, as far as scheduling, here's what I have found. There are some people who love scheduling links. They find your phone number online. They don't even realize you have a website that they can book online. So they just call you. But if they could just book through their phone through a scheduling link, they would prefer it. So I have this set up so that it says if the caller says they want to book an appointment, then say I can send you a link to book online, or I can collect some information and get you on the calendar. Which would you prefer? And this way, you're giving the person the out. If they don't want to stay on the phone and they'd rather just book online, then great, they can. But if they'd rather just get on the calendar and stay on the phone, then it explains, okay, time to collect this information. Collect first name, last name, phone number, email, property address, year built, square footage. Are there any detached structures on the property? So you tell it what information you want it to collect, and you write it out in plain English, as though you were writing it in a Google Doc for a person. You can also give it information about your pricing. In talking to home inspectors, I find everybody prices these things differently. Some people have very straightforward pricing. Some people have, a lot more elaborate pricing that's taking things like drive time into account. So usually what have found is that people prefer to not trust the AI to give a firm price. Um, Instead, if somebody asks about pricing, they give the receptionist some instructions to be able to give a ballpark number, but then they say, let the caller know that the inspector will follow up with them to confirm the final price. And then you can have information here about, the various types of inspections, how much do ancillaries cost, do you have any package discounts? Again, you just write that out in bullet points. I did mention you can transfer calls. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. It's very straightforward. You put in your phone number, you tell it what types of calls you would rather transfer to you. And again, that only works if you have two different phone numbers. Under send texts, again, you put in your scheduling link so that if that person would rather just get a link, or maybe you have your pricing on your website and they ask for pricing, you could say, hey, why don't I send you a link so that you can, review the pricing online. Then you've got scheduling. So right now we can connect to Google Calendar, we can connect to Acuity scheduling, and we can connect to Outlook. And you basically set the duration of your appointment. You explain what's the minimum notice that you need. You set your overall availability. And then if you have any special instructions, you can add them here. So I know most inspectors, they like to do just two inspections a day. Like they only like to offer like one morning slot, one in the afternoon. So here you'll see I have only offer the following times, 9 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. And so you can, again, just free form write out instructions. Um, the other piece I should mention is that you probably have certain people who call you all the time, right? So if you have, for example, a real estate agent who calls you all the time, you probably don't want to ask them, are you the homeowner? It's like, no, I'm not the homeowner. I've referred a bunch of clients to you. I'm just calling to schedule this. They're not going to want to go through that whole flow. So the nice thing is you can add contacts, right? So you can add a note in here and say, this is an agent I work with frequently. Do not ask them the following questions. You can give instructions for specific contacts. Okay, I'm going to come back here. So after a phone call comes in, and I'll share an example of a phone call, this is what you can expect. You get an email where you see all of that information has been collected. You can skim through it. You can listen to the recording, get a full transcript, and then via text message, you also get a short summary. And that way, if you're in the middle of something, you can look at the text message, see if it's maybe something where you want to call them back right away. Where do AI agents fall short? And what are voice AI companies like Upfirst working on improving? We have a big vision for where we want this to go, right? What it can do right now is what I showed you. It can handle intake, it can handle FAQs, and it can do some basic scheduling. But what we want is really a full receptionist that can text back and forth with customers, right? A lot of customers prefer to text. They don't just want to do phone calls. Deeper integrations with home inspector specific tools for inspectors that use distance as part of their prices, right? This is something that most AI receptionists don't have the ability to say, okay, you're at 22 Gleewood, that's going to be 20 miles away, that's going to take X, that adds X amount of dollars to the price. Most can't do that. Outbound calling. You may have situations where you want the receptionist to call somebody on your behalf. That's still not possible. And then better turn detection. This is one of the key things that needs to be improved for AI receptionists to really be human-like is perfecting when it's time for the AI to talk versus when it's time for the human to talk. This is something that a lot of companies are working on fixing. And the final piece, email, right? A good receptionist, you would just give them access to your email, to your text messages, and to your calls, and let them handle those inbound requests the way you would want them handled. So with that, I'll pause here. Happy to actually let me maybe share an example of a call, and then I'm happy to answer questions. I'm going to stop sharing, or at least try to stop sharing, just to make sure that I share my audio. Yep, okay. So I'm going to come back into Upfirst, and I'll just play, I won't play the full 3 minutes, but I'll just play a piece so you can get a sense of what this sounds like. And again, you may say, well, I want an Australian voice. I don't want a Southern voice. There's tons of voice options.
Thanks for calling Guardian Home Inspections. This is Tiffany. Joe is currently on an inspection, but I'm a virtual assistant who can help you get scheduled or take a message. Are you calling to schedule an inspection?
Yes, I am.
Sure, I can help you with that. I can send you a link to book online, or I can collect some information now and get you on the calendar. Which would you prefer?
I'd rather just get on the calendar.
Sure thing. To start, may I ask who I'm speaking with?
Yes, this is Alfredo Salkeld, Salkeld as in dog.
Okay, Alfredo, thanks for that. Are you buying or selling the home you'll need inspected?
I'm buying.
Okay, and is the property an existing home or new construction?
Existing home?
Great. Do you know the address of the property?
Yes, it is 22 Gleewood Place East. That is Durham, North Carolina, 27713.
Sure, thank you. Do you happen to know the year the home was built?
1982.
Got it. And what is the total square footage of the home?
It's 1,025 square feet. So I'll stop there. I'm sure you have been on calls like this. You don't need to hear the entire thing, but I wanted to give you sort of a sense of what do these calls actually sound like. Happy to answer any questions.
I got a couple questions for you, Alfredo, and give it some time for anyone writing in the chat if they would like to ask any questions as well. Um, what what some results have you has some of your clients seen since implementing your AI receptionist?
I mean, the thing that we hear is just that people are booking inspections that would have come in outside of, that would have otherwise gone to voicemail, and that it's just giving them peace of mind because I mean, home inspectors are in some uncomfortable spaces. Like it's not they're not in an office where they can comfortably answer a phone call, right? You're driving to and from, you're in the middle of something, and so knowing that the phones are covered is the feedback that I hear a lot.
Nice. Um, let's talk about just integrating. With scheduling platforms, systems do you use to currently integrate with, or what are you using to integrate with your software?
Yeah, so this is a good question, and I think a thing that's still challenging, especially in the home inspection space, right? Like there's a small number of software companies that offer home inspection software that make up, I would say, the majority, right? Like the Spectoras of the world, right? There's like these kind of key names that everybody is familiar with, and a lot of them have a pretty closed off ecosystem, right? So you've probably heard of an API. This is sort of the key that companies give to software companies like us to be able to connect to them, right? So like Google Calendar, Outlook, they give us access to their platform so that we can connect with it. But right now, we it's very limited the amount of sort of inspection specific software that we could connect to. So most people I've seen handle this one of two ways. Usually their home inspection software syncs with Google Calendar. So they'll sort of use Google Calendar as an in-between. Something gets sent to Google Calendar, we can read the Google Calendar to make sure we don't double book them, and then they will manually add things into their inspection software. Or they say, I don't want this thing to book directly. I just want it to collect the information and then tell the person that I'm going to call them back to confirm a final date or time. So it's definitely customizable to what each person feels comfortable with. I've seen some people who they're like, I want this thing to give them the exact price, and other people who are not quite ready to let their hands off the wheels in that regard. They want some guardrails in place where this is just giving, rough estimates, rough times. So the person feels like, okay, this call was answered. I'm going to go with this company. But in the end, the inspector follows up with them.
Let's kind of talk about some limitations that you mentioned earlier. I think you said something about text messaging and outbound calling. Do you have a timeline on putting that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. So right now, the text messages that we can send are one-way messages, meaning, you ask for pricing, you say, hey, I'd rather just book online, send me the link. Or another use case, hey, do you have a sample inspection that I can look at? Those are things that you could send during the call, but the person can't reply to that text message. The company that we built prior to this one was a company called Simple Texting that was all SMS. That was all we did. So we know how important it is. I would say in the next 2 to 3 months, we're likely to have that full two-way texting inbox with the ability to be able to see people actually reply to text messages, right? With the hope being that if someone needs to be able to send a photo, right? Like you can manage that all within one place.
Nice. Um, let's kind of talk about pricing. Uh, how does your pricing compare to traditional answering services, and what's included?
Yeah. So we decided when you shop around for AI receptionists, you'll find that most charge by the minute. So when we were starting, it was kind of a key decision of do we want to charge by the minute because for these companies, their costs are by the minute. The longer someone's on the phone, the more expensive it is for us in terms of compute and some of the costs that we have. But like, who knows how long of I never think about I've been on the phone X number of minutes, my calls are X number of minutes on average. So we decided to keep it simple. It's just by the call. And I'll just share my screen rather than it's a little bit easier to visualize. So we offer four base plans. And this is why it's kind of, I mean, if you're letting calls go to voicemail, it's a really inexpensive experiment to see if this is able to book you additional inspections. Because especially if you're, a solo inspector, you can usually start with this 30 call plan, which is $25. Something else I should mention is that we have a lot of people who use this purely as a way of blocking out spam. They're so tired, especially when you have a small business and your phone number is advertised online. You get bombarded with spam, bombarded with there's an urgent problem with your Google listing. Call us back immediately. Like everybody's probably gotten this call. So when you come into Upfirst, you'll see this call shows in green, other calls show hang up. So this means the call ended in less than 15 seconds and you're not billed for it. But if a spam call comes in, it'll show up as spam and it will have been blocked. And so that doesn't count towards your call volume. So only difference between these four plans is just the price per call. All the features are available across all of the plans, and it just comes down to the number of calls that you get. Of course, there's no contracts. If you want to cancel, you don't have to talk to a person to cancel. You can just click cancel. We've tried to make it sort of as simple to get started or to end if you decide that it's not the right fit.
I got one more question, then we can wrap it up. Do you plan to expand Upfirst AI receptionist technology beyond home inspectors to other industries?
Yeah. So, yes. We work with a lot of different types of companies. We work with dog groomers, real estate agents, law firms. There's some that don't work with us. We don't have a ton of restaurants who use the platform. Things are a little bit trickier with restaurants because they want people to be able to actually place the order and it go directly into their, point of sale system. But the plan is to keep expanding. We want to make an AI receptionist that can handle all of the annoying admin stuff about running a business. I found that every small business owner has the thing that they're really good at that keeps them in business, right? Like we had the beekeeping thing. We wanted to focus on the beekeeping, and everything else kind of felt like a distraction. And so that's our goal with this, right? Is to be able to remove that distraction so people can focus on their actual superpower, which is helping people, right? In your guys' case, helping people make informed decisions about the homes that they're buying and selling.
Perfect. Well, I think that's it. Do you have a contact page that we can look at really quick that
Yeah,
if
let me share
someone,
my screen.
anyone who's watching would like to jot that down real quick?
Yeah, feel free to sign up for a trial. It's a 2-week trial. We don't ask for your credit card for the trial, so you don't have to be worried about being auto billed. And if you need help with setup, either myself or someone else on my team can always jump on a call and make sure it's tuned into what you need. And you all get a discount as members, of course.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Alfredo, for your presentation. Thank you for spending your Wednesday evening with us as well.